Hey, I'm Ben Chaib. Thank you for joining me today. I want to introduce you to a community that we've created called Wire to Win. It's built for people who are tired of grinding and ready to grow with alignment. This is not just another training, this is a turning point for leaders, creators, and high performers who want to win from the inside out without burnout, confusion, or chasing trends. By the end of this session, you'll know exactly how to unlock your inner wiring and join a tribe built for momentum and mastery and meaning. I look forward to seeing you in our community. I've spent the last 30 years helping leaders and teams generate over $1 billion in revenue. Now, I'm not saying this to impress you, but to impress upon you because I've always been obsessed with one key thing: what makes people actually perform at their best. My journey has taken me from sales floors to boardrooms, through cancer recovery, spiritual reinvention, and launching companies. Each chapter has taught me the same lesson. Real success doesn't come from the outside tactics, it comes from within. Over the years, I've watched incredibly talented people burn out, not because they weren't capable, but because they were misaligned. They didn't understand how they were wired, so they tried to copy others, push harder, fix themselves, instead of learning how to operate in their natural strength. That's why I created P3 Firm, and that's why I created Wired to Win. Because when you understand the person, you unlock the performance. And when performance aligns with purpose, potential becomes exponential. So we use cutting edge behavioral assessments and coaching frameworks to help leaders and teams get crystal clear on how they're wired so they can stop grinding, start aligning, and grow with intention. This work isn't about motivation, it's about mastery. So it's important for you to understand you're not broken, you're just misaligned. See, the problem with most people is they're grinding through life misaligned with how they're wired. Now, I'm sure you felt this way because I know I have over the years. They're burning out, making poor decisions, or second guessing themselves constantly. The misconception: they think they need more discipline or more motivation. Now, we've all heard those things, right? But what they really need is clarity. The truth is, when you understand how you're wired, everything shifts. You lead better, you decide faster, and you grow with precision. The moment that it all clicked, I remember that moment like it was yesterday. See, I realized behavioral science, things like DISC, values index, and attribute index, weren't personality tests. They were tools to unlock someone's core wiring. And when I combined those tools with community, coaching, and weekly alignment, boom, results accelerated. And that's when Wired to Win was born. Over the next few slides, we're going to discuss the 3 core secrets to winning with alignment. So let's talk about secret 1. Your challenges are actually clues to your genius. Most people are fighting themselves. I know I've gone through this time and time again in my life, and we call it hustle. When I realized my weaknesses were actually my strengths in the wrong environment, I stopped trying to fix myself and started building around my wiring. So I want to share an example with you. I have a client named Marcus. He came to me completely burned out. He was working in a high stakes sales role. He expected to be always on, chasing quotas, cold calling, closing hard. His boss kept on telling him, you've got to be more aggressive, more assertive, more alpha. And you know what? Honestly, the problem wasn't with Marcus at all. We ran his behavioral profile, we looked at his DISC, and then everything clicked. Marcus was a high S and a high C profile. That means that he thrived on structure, he loved the depth in relationships, but he wasn't wired for a high pressure sales role and fast paced role at all. So he didn't lack drive, he lacked alignment. So we repositioned him into a new role in client success team, and he was doing more consultative selling, and he's working at the same company, but in a different lane. Instead of chasing leads, he was nurturing long-term accounts, solving deeper problems and building trust. His confidence soared and his performance tripled. He was once called the problem employee, but then became employee of the month twice. Why? Because he stopped trying to force himself to be someone he wasn't and started leveraging who he actually was. So here's a key takeaway: you're not underperforming in most cases, you're just misaligned. When you align your natural wiring with the right role, the right rhythm, in the right environment, performance becomes inevitable. Secret number two: self mastery beats hustle every time. So, what is the trap? The hustle trap is willpower fades, hustle burns you out, and external pressures create temporary results but leads to an inevitable crashes. But when you build rhythm around how you're wired, you don't need external pressure. You perform naturally. I mean, you find that state of flow. And that's what I call the alignment advantage. So, I had a client, Maya. She was a high achieving marketing executive in her late 30s, smart, driven, always the first one in and the last one out. But behind the success was complete chaos. She was constantly exhausted, snapping at her team, second guessing every decision and feeling like an imposter from time to time. She tried everything. She tried productivity apps, burnout retreats. She even took a sabbatical, but nothing stuck with her. Why? And I'll tell you why. Because she was treating the symptoms, not the root. That's when she took her full P3 assessment. And what we did is we looked at her profile and it shows she was a high D and her value shows she was high economic and high individualistic, the combination. So she was very decisive, fast moving, values driven, and future focused. But her company culture was slow, overly collaborative, and driven by consensus. The problem wasn't with her at all. It was a mismatch between her wiring and her environment. Once she saw that, what we did is we worked on everything to change it. She negotiated a shift in her role to focus on high level strategy and external partnerships where we could use her strengths and so she can thrive. She also used her values index to realign her personal schedule. Mornings for creative thinking, afternoons for meetings, and built in some time for reflection. Because of this, she got real clarity and everything started clicking. 6 months later, she wasn't just performing better, she was sleeping better, leading better, living better. And the craziest part, her output went up 40%, even though she was working fewer hours. You might be asking yourself, how can that be, or why did this happen? Because alignment creates energy. Hustle without self-mastery drains it. So key takeaway here that I want you to have is master yourself and you will master everything else. Let's move on to secret number three. Growth accelerates inside the right tribe. So imagine, that you're standing at the base of a massive mountain. Your goals, your vision, your next level. You got a backpack, a little water, and a vague idea of the route. You start climbing, the trail gets steeper, the air gets thinner, and you slip. You question yourself. That's what most high performers are doing every single day, climbing solo. Now imagine this instead. You're still at the base of the same mountain, but this time you've got a Sherpa who's climbed it before. You've got a map, you've got a rope team watching your back, and when the terrain gets tricky, they hand you tools. When you hit a wall, they show you a better path. That's what it's like inside Wire to Win. We're not here to motivate you. We're here to align you, equip you, and surround you with the right people who are climbing as well. So, the whole reason why I created is about a client named James. That's the reason why I started Wire to Win. He was thinking that he just needed clarity on his career, but what he really needed was a community. On his own, James second guessed every decision. He read books, which I'm sure you all have done, binge YouTube, which I've done myself, and try to piece it all together. But progress in his life was slow and lonely. Inside the group, things shifted. He got weekly feedback, saw how others were applying the tools, and he realized he wasn't the only one wrestling with imposter syndrome or decision fatigue. Within weeks, he took action that he'd been avoiding for years. He asked for a raise, he rebuilt his morning rhythm, He reconnected to his wife in a way that he hadn't in months. Why? Because he stopped doing it alone and started working within the community. So I want to take a moment here and introduce you to a place where all of this comes together. Wire to Win is our school community focused for leaders, creators, growth-driven humans who want to win with alignment, not with burnout. I want to talk about what you get, okay, with Wire Within. So here you go. You get weekly coaching and live calls, self-mastery challenges, tools to decode yourself and others, a private school community, access to a gift that I want to give you, which is a behavioral report for your loved one or team member, surprise bonuses like monthly Wire to Win live with guest experts. The total value of all of this is easily over $3,000 a year. What I want to do now is give you an example of me walking through, it's a video I recorded of walking through a report so you can understand what this P3 behavioral assessment will look like for you. So bear with me as I start this. A quick illustration of one's report here. Here's an example of the profile. You can get your look at your disc, okay, which you get the color is your natural style, and the gray is your adaptive style. So natural style is how you behave when you're being most natural, and adaptive style is how you behave when you feel that you're being observed. So I like to say like who you are at home and who you are at work. Then we'll go over your values and motivations. And I say you're driven by your top three. So this person, Ryan, is driven by economic, individualistic, and political. Political meaning not what side, if you're a Republican or Democrat, but political, whether you want to be a leader or someone in the organization that is thriving for leadership. And then the attribute index, which is your external and internal ways of making your decisions. Okay. So when we look at the disc real quick, you'll see that here, this report will go real deep in the disc, and you'll learn a little bit more about D being decisive, I being interactive, which is the people part, stabilization, which is pace, cautious, which is about procedures. And if you look at this and you go right down the middle, basically, if you score above 50, you're more demanding, less deliberate. If you look at the D, or you're more gregarious or less or more introspective, right? When you look at this, or pace, you're either more patient or more spontaneous, depending on if you're above 50 or below 50. And then cautious of procedures, either more cautious if you're above 50 or more challenging if you're below 50. So if we look at this right here, you see the four components of behavior. This is what I said. If you had a t-shirt, this is who Ryan is. If you looked at him, he is highly extroverted, ask, and people-oriented about the middle, less introverted, okay? It goes down here and it breaks down each and every one of these scores. So if you look at his D, he's a very strong self-starter who always seems to have a high level of urgency. So depending on how you answer this will show you who you are in your scores. Interactive, this is how you approach interacting with people and your display of emotions, seek freedom of speech, and ability to express ideas and opinions openly. So this is what you can see your report looking like. Pace of the work environment. Example here is you appreciate the need for others to have freedom and less structure, but he prefers moderate structure naturally, right? He can multitask very well. Then when you look at procedures, here prefer encourage to create, try new ideas and procedures. Your opinions tend to be quite firm when it comes to breaking the convention to answer the needs of the situation. You want little, if any, routine when it comes to work. So then it goes deeper in who his natural style is and who his adaptive style is, okay? Then it goes further in the report, how to be more effective, ideas for being more effective. You'll get your report ideas to stay motivated. This is all based on your answers, your individual report, strength-based insights. You'll learn what your ideal job climate, which is, I think, especially important because a lot of people think they want remote work, and they learn that their ideal job climate does not support that. So I think while they like the freedom of remote work, they also feel lost in that freedom and being at home without being with others. So it really depends on your score. areas of continual improvement, and it goes preferred learning and training styles, how you prefer to share knowledge or teach it, and how you prefer to receive knowledge or learn it. I think this is important because sometimes we think we like to learn a certain way, and the facts are we like to learn differently or teach differently. And each individual is different. Things to do effectively communicate with you, which is great for people to understand on communicating with you and to avoid in effectively communicating with you. Some time for some self-reflection here. And then we go into values index, which really gets into each and every one of these values. It breaks down each value. It talks about the general trait on each value and how you learn at things. And it goes into deeper, when you go to the values, like if you look at your key drivers, this is where I say you really want to pay attention to is, how you are motivated and what motivates you to get things done. So that's how you are into values. And then we go further into past all those values. As you see, we can break down each one to the attribute index, how you make your decisions, and then how you are at work. So this report really talks about 4 categories of talent profile to go into getting results, interpersonal skills, making decisions, and work ethic. Now, depending on if you do tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3, which we'll talk more in this webinar, but tier 1 is really focused on a general approach on who you are. Tier 2 and tier 3 gets very detailed based on job specific roles. So right here, it takes getting results and it breaks it down into further like attention to detail, consistency and reliability, accountability for others, project and goal focus, personal commitment, results orientation, surrendering control. And, it shows you the ideal benchmark and where you want to be, and then areas of opportunities of improvement. And we'll learn more about how you can grow from these opportunities and improvement in other tiers. And how you make decisions, work ethics. And then what I say here is when you look at the core attributes, really coach people to focus on their top 25%. So if you take a line and you go straight down the middle here, and then go across the quarter here, and what you would do is divide it into quarters and say, this is where you want to spend your energy, any roles and responsibilities that are catered to your top 25% versus your bottom 25%. And then you'll be happier. So this just gives you a rough idea of what the report would look like. You will get. So let's get further into the webinar. I hope you enjoyed the video and seeing what a peak potential profile would look like for you. So I want to let you know the investment to get into Wire to Win is only $47 a month. Now that's during the launch phase. We will be increasing it to $97 a month, but that's less than $1.60 a day to radically shift your self-awareness and your performance for your future. And for those that like to take action, we have a fast action bonus for you. It's limited to the first 15 people. But if you join during the webinar, you'll also get a free self-mastery report. So that's a $397 value, completely free. So the report that I'm talking about provides tailored feedback and a 30-day roadmap. We look at job-specific traits. For example, we look at traits in customer service, management, leadership, sales management, IT, and financial services. So I think that's very critical and important. But we will also answer additional questions like for your custom report. And here are some of them just to give you an idea. It's, we talk about growth in career customization, current role and experience. I'll ask you questions like, what's your current job title in the industry that you're in? How long you've been in that current role? What is your primary responsibilities? What skills or strengths do you rely on most in your current role? What part of your job do you enjoy most? What part do you enjoy least? Do you currently lead a team? If so, for how many people? And then we'll look at your ambitions and aspirations. Where do you see yourself professionally in the next 1 to 3 years, next 5 to 10 years? What role, title, or type of work do you see yourself aiming for? What's your primary focus? What motivates you to get the most out of your work? Is it impact, recognition, creativity, income, problem solving, growth? Do you aspire to lead others or grow in your current lane or change paths entirely? We'll talk about self-perception and barriers. What do you believe are your top 3 strengths? What challenges or blind spots do you feel are holding you back? Have you taken a personality assessment before? If so, what kind? Which ones? What did you like about them? What you dislike about them? Environment and fit, we'll talk about. Describe the type of work environment where you feel the most energized. What kind of leadership style helps you thrive? What kind of team or culture would be a perfect fit for your genius? And we'll talk about intentional growth. Like, what is your current number one career goal right now? What success would look like over the next 30 days? And what would you like to walk away from with the self mastery report? So, those are some of the questions that we'll get into. That, remember, for the first 15 people that decide to get involved in the community right now, will get access to this report for free. So, here's my promise to you, and it's simple. If you fully engage in this community, you show up for the coaching, you work through all the tools, your clarity, your confidence, and your performance will shift, period. It isn't a library of content that you'll forget about next week. It's an active community built around your transformation. I've seen it work for other leaders, for entrepreneurs, for high performers across varied industries. So if you're the kind of person who takes action and values growth, then you'll love this community. It'll be one of the best investments you ever made. So we're not building dabblers here. We're building winners. And some of the things you'll talk about is you'll learn how to earn one of these, which I think is pretty exciting about. But I'll match my commitment with every tool, insight, and ounce of experience that I got if you'll put in the effort. Here's just a couple of quotes of people that I've worked with in the past. They stopped second guessing themselves at work and finally got promoted. The community helps them lead their team better with clarity and confidence because some of the free tools that we provide for team building. So as we wrap it up here, this is your moment to stop forcing success in your life, start aligning with it. If you felt, I'm sure that you have felt burnout in what it feels like for yourself and for others. You've seen how misalignment can cost you money and cost you time. It is time for you to win differently from the inside out. So what I want you to do right now is go to joinwiredtowin.com today and let's get you started. I look forward to seeing you in the community. Thank you for joining.